بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله الحمد لله حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا كريم. By the grace of Allah Azza wa Jal, we come together to discuss a very important hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and that hadith has to do, and today we're taking the hadith of arrogance, so we're going to skip a few hadith, and the hadith that we're taking today is the hadith of arrogance. The hadith is narrated by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and I believe it's the last hadith in your books. قال, he said, لا يدخل الجنة من كان في قلبه مثقال حب ذرة من كبر. That a man that has even the slightest bit of kibr, slightest bit of arrogance in his heart, he doesn't enter paradise. So, a man sitting next to the Prophet ﷺ, he was a little bit confused about what exactly is kibr. So he further asked the Prophet ﷺ, he said, O Prophet of Allah ﷺ, إن الرجل يحب أن يكون ثوبه حسنا ونعله حسنة. And then the Prophet ﷺ replied, he said, قال إن الله جميل يحب الجمال الكبر بطر الحق وغمط الناس. That the man asked the Prophet ﷺ, he said that, O Prophet of Allah ﷺ, a man loves for his clothes to be neat and nice and tidy. And likewise, he also wishes for him to have good shoes. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, that's not really from kibr, rather Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beautiful and He loves beauty as well. Al-kibr batarul haqq wa ghamtun nas. Arrogance is when you reject the truth and you look down upon people. It's when you reject the truth and you don't respect people in the manner that, or in the due manner that they're supposed to be respected. So, this is how the Prophet ﷺ, he described arrogance to be, that you reject the truth. And what the interesting thing about kibr, arrogance, is that it leads definitely, its definition, yes, it is, rejection of truth, but it actually leads you to rejecting truth. Because when you look at yourself as you're something that you're really not, you begin to what? You begin to think that whatever anybody else is saying won't be the truth. It can't be the truth. That's one thing. Secondly, not only does that happen, rather Allah Azza wa Jal Himself, He takes the tawfiq out of you for you to be able to accept the truth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this in the Qur'an. He says, سَأَصْرِفُ عَنْ آيَاتِي الَّذِينَ يَتَكَبَّرُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Those that are arrogant in the land, I will turn them away from my signs. I will turn them away from my signs, from my verses. As in, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take away that capability from within you of accepting truth. Not only does kibr do that to you, rather Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase you from staying away from the truth. Now, there's a lot of things that can be said about kibr and how it is and what happens and, but to sum it up, usually, when a person is mutakabbir, it's one of three things that happen. Or there's one of three signs that he can, look at and judge himself based on. Number one is that you start to feel that you are greater than somebody else. You start to feel that you're greater than somebody else. Now you can either feel that you're greater than somebody else in something pertinent to the dunya. Like, a new camera you got, for example. You can feel that. Sahih? Or you can feel that you're greater than somebody else because of a certain trait that you have that's Islamic. Like, for example, you pray a lot. Like, for example, you fast a lot. Like, for example, you have ilm, or you read Qur'an, or you whatever it may be. A lot of good deeds. Anything that you do, you start to feel that you have precedence over others because of that action. These are two aspects of one looking at himself as greater than somebody else. Right? Now let's recap. First of all, in terms of the dunya, and everything pertinent to the dunya, if a person looks at himself as greater than somebody else because of a little piece of dunya that he has, then this person is amongst the most miserable of people. How so? How so? Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said in a beautiful hadith, he said, الدنيا ملعونة وملعون ما فيها إلا, and then he made some exceptions. That the dunya with everything in it, the worldly life with everything in it is cursed. And cursed is everything within the dunya. Except, the Prophet ﷺ said, a person of knowledge and a person that seeks that knowledge. And then he made some exceptions, different narrations show different things. So if a person thinks he's greater than somebody else because he has more la'na than others, what kind of a miserable individual is this? Right? And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لو كانت الدنيا تعدل عند الله جناح بعوضة ما سقى منها كافر شربة ماء. If the dunya was to be equivalent in the sight of Allah Azza wa Jal, even the size of a mosquito's wing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wouldn't have given even a sip of water to a non-believer. But He did give sips of waters, rather He gave them the dunya with everything in it. So it's not worth anything inside of Allah. So if a person, he thinks of himself greater than somebody else because of a little bit of dunya that he has, then this is a person that's really miserable. Worthless. His mind is not working straight. If he realizes these realities, that the dunya is mal'una. It's a whole bunch of, except the goodness therein, everything else is what? A test from Allah Azza wa Jalla. And now let's come back to the deen. When you come back to the deen, we said, remember, that looking at yourself as greater than somebody else, you can do it in two different manners, right? You can look at yourself greater because of some sort of dunya that you have. You can look at yourself as greater than somebody else because of some sort of, trait that you have that's Islamic trait, right? So now, a person of knowledge. Let's take a person of knowledge, for example. Or, you guys are all students of knowledge, seeking knowledge. Let's take a person that's even seeking knowledge. When you walk into a meeting with people that are not going to Islamic classes, with people that are not attending these sort of activities, with people that don't keep a beard, with people that don't do this, don't do that. You walk into a meeting, do you look down upon him? Whether you like it or not, something comes in your heart. Maybe I'm a little bit better than him, maybe whatever, something like that comes up in the heart of a mind, right? Of a person. Right? It does. You look to another person, if you're really, really pious, or quote-unquote pious, you look to another person and you wish for him to be the one that says salam to you. Right? You wish for him to be the person that says salam to you. Wa'alaikum as-salam wa rahmatullah. And not you salam to him. You wish for him to go and tell people about the good that you've done and about the piety that you have. This guy prays at nighttime, this guy does this, and this guy, and we give that example of the individual, he was praying salah, and everybody's like, subhanallah, this guy's got so much khushu', and all of a sudden he turns around and says, I'm fasting as well. Right? So you wish for people to, express those good qualities and those good traits that you have. All of those, right? All of that is coming from your look at other people, you looking down upon other people. Right? Now when you look down upon other people, what happens? You have committed an act of kibr. You have been arrogant. And we understand the promise of the Prophet ﷺ to the individual that's arrogant, that he will end up nowhere on the Day of Judgment except in hellfire. What do you have to be arrogant about? When you realize that when you're acting in that behavior, when you're having that arrogance that is leading you to nowhere but hellfire, what's the reason for you to be arrogant then? Anything you have is worth nothing. You're going to hell. Right? Isn't that so? And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said in a hadith, من قال إذا قال الرجل هلك الناس فهو أهلكه. Whenever a person says that people have been destroyed, then this individual is the most destroyed of them all. What does that mean? Could somebody explain to me what that means? When a person says that people have been destroyed, then this individual is the most destroyed of them all. Does anybody understand this?
Those who are in the dunya and they are in love with the dunya. The guy who says this, he's the
okay.
On top of them.
So he's saying he feels like he's on top. Okay, go ahead.
He feels that people are on the wrong path, so he thinks they are destroyed.
And how often do we hear this? He feels. So basically, the hadith means when a person goes out and he says, people do these kind of things, and people, subhanallah, may Allah guide the people, may Allah guide the people, like he's not from the people, he doesn't need the guidance. He thinks he's beyond that. He's a person of stature. He's beyond that. إِذَا قَالَ الرَّجُلُ هَلَكَ النَّاسِ فَهُوَ أَهْلَكُ. Whenever a man says people have been destroyed, then he is the most destroyed of them all. How so? The ulama, they explain this hadith as follows. They said that when the person, like any individual, a lay person for example, he sees a person praying at the mosque, and the guy has a beard, and he's praying with all this khushu'. Of course he doesn't look back and say I'm fasting, but he's doing all of these things. So a person comes out of the blue. He doesn't know this person. He says, Salaam alaikum. He wants to talk to this individual. But this guy feels like, he's on cloud 9. He's beyond this person. So he's looking up in that manner. He's looking up in that manner. Right? So the ulama, they said, look at the two people. What deed did both of them do? The one person that wasn't so practicing out in the open, he had a good thought about another believer based on the apparent outset or the apparent attire, right? So because of that, he had a clean heart towards this individual, which is a good deed. It's called husnul dhan. It's called husnul dhan. With all believers, we're supposed to have husnul dhan. We're supposed to have good thoughts about another person, so long as we have something else to, a reason to believe otherwise. So this person that's not so practicing apparently, he had a good thought with this person that looks very practicing apparently, and this person did the exact opposite. In his mind, he's like, man, this guy is going to talk to me? And this happens a lot of times when people, and you guys are all, inshallah ta'ala, from good families and good people. A lot of times people, not practicing people, the one thing that they complain about is like, when we go and meet practicing folks, what happens? We don't feel comfortable around them. They start talking about issues that are beyond our comprehension. And the Prophet ﷺ or Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu used to say, خَاطِبُ النَّاسَ عَلَى قَدْرِ عُقُولِهِمْ. Talk to the people based on that which they will understand. If someone's around you, look at his feelings and consider the fact that the guy's around you. Don't start discussing a topic that will totally go above his head. He won't understand. He might feel offended. Especially a person, now you're a da'i. You're a person calling people to Islam. Right? At every single moment you have to adapt a very, very da'i-like demeanor. A person walks up to you, make sure you give him a smile in the face. Make sure you give him a smile in the face. Over here, this individual that walked up to this practicing so-called person in the sight of Allah, this person will be better. Why? Because this guy did a good deed, and this guy did a deed that could lead him to hell. Because he's having kibr against this individual. But out in the open, this guy looks good, he's got the beard, he's praying salah, she's got the hijab, she's wearing the niqab, but that's all out in the open. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يَوْمَ تُبْلَ السَّرَائِرُ, on that day, everything that's within the heart will come out. People know, Allah knows what's in the heart, right? I want to leave you off with a story of Malik ibn Dinar. Now most of you, I want to have a raise of hands. How many of you are from India? Raise your hands. Most of you are from India. So you guys will relate to this story, inshallah ta'ala. And even if you're not, inshallah you relate to it anyways. The story is as such. A man by the name of Malik ibn Dinar. Do you guys know who Malik ibn Dinar is? Nobody knows? You've heard of him. Malik ibn Dinar was one of the pious predecessors, Salaf al-Salih. And at a very early age in Islam, Malik ibn Dinar, he packed his bags and he left to India. That's why I said you guys will relate to this. Malik ibn Dinar, he's amongst the pious slaves of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And we have stories and statements from Malik ibn Dinar recorded in books, particularly books pertinent to Tazkiyatun Nafs, right? But the reason why I said that you'll relate to him is because of the fact that he went to India with about 16 or 17 friends of his. They were all pious men. And because of him, a lot of Islam was actually able to spread in India. Malik ibn Dinar was amongst the people that helped in spreading Islam in India. And he's buried right now. His grave is still there in India, in southern India. The grave is still there, and it's known that this is Malik ibn Dinar's grave. So Malik ibn Dinar, he was sitting there one day, and a man from amongst the children of the governor walked by. We spoke about kibr, we spoke about what exactly kibr is, gave you some examples and some manifestations of kibr. Now I want to tell you the solution of kibr. A solution of kibr. There's a lot of solutions, but because of the shortage of time, I'll stick to one solution of kibr. A man walked by, he was amongst the children of the governor. And, Malik ibn Dinar saw that the way this guy is walking, he's got some sort of kibr in there. Because you can tell that from the walk of an individual. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this in the Qur'an. When He speaks about a person that wasn't able to follow the commandments of his Lord in Surah Al-Qiyamah. If you guys read the second page of Surah Al-Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing this individual, He says, ثُمَّ ذَهَبَ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهِ يَتَمَطَّى. Then he left to his family. He's describing this individual. Then he left off and departed off to his family, يَتَمَطَّى, in the state while he was doing at-tamatti. What's at-tamatti? At-tamatti comes from the word mata, which is the back of an individual. That's why you call a matiyya, because a mount on a camel or any other animal is called a matiyya. So you call that a matiyya, right? Now, mata is your back. Yatamatta, according to the ulama of the Arabic language, means when you bend your back. Right? I could stand up and show you the walk, but I think you guys can imagine. When a person goes, he's like, yo, what's going on, blood? Like he's walking like this. I don't know if any of you have seen this. But, so the point of the matter is that, this is called at-tamatti. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes this individual that walks like this, that this is that person that wasn't able to make it in terms of listening to the commandment of his Lord. In fact, Allah's Prophet ﷺ even said, أَلَا أُخْبِرُكُمْ بِأَهْلِ النَّارِ. Should I not tell you of the people of fire? He says, كُلُّ جَوَّاظٍ جَعْظَرِيٍّ مُسْتَكْبِرٍ. Any person that's a jawwaz. Any person that's a jawwaz. And the ulama, they explain the word jawwaz to mean a person that does the same motion that I mentioned in his walk. a lot of times, people that are from the gangster culture, they adapt this sort of behavior. And that's why Allah's Prophet ﷺ is saying, amongst the traits of the individual that will go to hellfire, will be this sort of, walk where you go right, left, and forward and backwards, and you're trying to, bending your back in different directions to try to make yourself look cool. It's not so cool. Now, coming back to this, now the son of the governor here, he was walking in this manner. So Malik ibn Dinar, he saw him from a distance, he said, it would have been better, it would have been more beautiful if he didn't walk in this manner. So the son of the governor looked at Malik ibn Dinar, he said, do you know who I am? Malik ibn Dinar knew. He said, yeah, I know exactly who you are. Brother, I even know your father. So I know exactly who you are. He said, أولك نطفة مذرة وآخرك جيفة قذرة وبين ذلك تحمل العذرة. He said, in the beginning of your creation, you were nothing more than a little piece of semen, sperm, nothing more than that, little, worthless piece of semen, madhara. And at the end of your creation, after a couple of days only of your death, you will be nothing more than a jifatun qadhara, a smelling corpse, a dead body that stinks and people don't even want to come close to it. And between the fact that you are no more than a semen, and between the fact that you will die and you will be a corpse, you have nothing in your stomach more than al-adhirah, more than the feces. You're carrying stool around in your body. You're going to die as a stinky person, and you were born when you were before you were born, your creation was nothing more than a little piece of semen. Who the heck do you think you are? So when Malik ibn Dinar, he said this to this child of the governor, he just kind of said, he was shocked. And he couldn't do anything because he realized the reality of creation. And that's why the ulama, they said, a solution for kibr is to go and remind yourself of the reality of your creation. And that's why Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi said, whatever you do, however high you get, at the end of the day, you're going to come back and you're going to use the bathroom. Just to make you realize your spot. You're going to use the bathroom. You're not going to be able to escape from that. With that being said, we'll stop. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.